Welcome to a new episode of On the Spot Review. I'm gonna talk about Last Night in Soho. This is an Edgar Wright film. I really did not think this movie was coming out so soon. I saw one trailer for it last year, and then over the weekend I saw someone tweeting about it saying how this movie was more divisive than Baby Driver, where people later on realized that movie wasn't as good as when it came out. I didn't really love Baby Driver. I thought it was one of Edgar Wright's weaker films. I I thought it was a style over substance movie. It had nice action scenes and stuff like that, but the cast, the story, all just felt kind of weak. And the ending was just kind of a weak ending on top of it. So the movie itself was just whatever. So going into this movie, I had really no expectations. I didn't know what I was gonna see. So when I went in, I was pleasantly surprised. I thought the soundtrack was amazing. It was outstanding. I really love the soundtrack that they used. It fit in with the times that it was kind of dabbling with because it was going between modern times and the 1960s. So it did a good job kind of having both era of music playing that fit the themes and tones. Like there's a scene where you're in this like uh sex nightclub kind of thing where you have this singer singing this very provocative song and you have these dancers dancing in very lewd ways. And I like that song. That song was called Puppet on a String, and it was such a nice, like, it set the tone how uneasy what was going on. You're just like, oh shit, like, that's fucked up. Like, you start to realize what's really going on with this part of the story, and it's like, oh shit. So I do like that they use that song to illustrate that. The other songs are also pretty killer. I honestly don't remember the names of them, to be honest. There's one that's like "You're My World," which is also pretty good. Uh, the soundtrack just in general just a fun like selection of music. So I really like the music. The cinematography I thought was outstanding. Usually Edgar Wright films I feel have decent cinematography that's like good or like average or creative. And this is one of his creative films with very unique ways of filming scenes that really stood out in my mind. Some that felt very poignant or at least smart. And part of me really doesn't know if I'm giving the movie too much credit in some of these scenes, but there's a few that I was like, oh, that like it shows something that's pretty interesting. And I don't know if anyone like thought the same. I'll get into it in the story segment of this review, but I'll just get into it like just a lighter version of it. There's a shot where you start seeing these ghosts show up, these ghoulish men, dead men or whatever, these ghosts of like these blurred out faces, and they start terrorizing the main character. And there's only one character, this other supporting character, whatever. The only character that doesn't get like uh shown to be a ghost, like she goes to school, and every other student, every other teacher, or whatever, they all start to show as this ghost kind of character. Like they just show up this like guy in a business suit, blurred face, and it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, and that start chasing the main character. Everyone starts to show up like that except for one person. So there's a shot where all these ghosts are behind him, and he's showing genuine concern for the main character. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is like kind of symbolic for how some people might feel like everyone is like a predator, or like I can't trust them, they don't know me, I don't know them, or like stranger kind of deal. But this one guy is genuinely like concerned for me, and he's never seen to be like in the mix of those ghosts. Like you never see him like that. You only see him for who he is. And I thought that was kind of clever. It kind of it showed uh how scary the world could be if you have no trust for anyone except for like one person or whatever. So I thought that was kind of cool. It also goes into a little more deeper into the story that I'll get into very very soon. The acting I thought was good for the most part. I think overall it's a strong cast. My only bummer or criticism I should say is that it was very hard to kind of hear what some of the characters were saying because they have a very, very thick accent. And it's just like, holy shit, like maybe have some subtitles. It's just it's that's my only criticism. Though I did kind of get used to it as the movie went on, so it wasn't as bad, but still I still wish it was easier to hear what they were saying. Uh so with that said, I am gonna get into the story stuff, so there will be spoilers. If you want to skip ahead, I'll put the timestamp in the description to when I get to the rating or stuff like that. So you've been warned. So the story is a very creative horror story. I thought this was much more thoughtful than any other horror film. Usually every horror film always revolves around ghosts, demons. Oh my god, guys, some guy did some ritual that summoned uh Babadoo, and Babadoo's gonna fuck us all now, guys. Holy shit. Why do they fucking summon it? Aw shit, we have demons and shit like that. Fucking stupid. No. This I thought was a much more compelling story. It kinda seemed like it was a horror twist to uh Midnight in Paris. That's what it felt like to me. So it follows the main character, Louise, who goes to London to become an aspiring fashion designer. So she goes to this fashion school, whatever. And as she's going there, she realizes that a lot of the people there don't really give a shit about her. Her dorm mates treat her like shit. They're just like, oh, who cares about you? And in the very beginning of the movie, I almost forgot to mention, by the way, that that Louise's mom died. They don't really explain why, and honestly, there is almost no significance for her being dead. But she died because she went to London, and something happened there that caused her to die, or whatever, something like that. And then she went to London and she met those dorm mates where they made fun of her, like who hangs out on the first night and talks about their dead mom. What a fucking loser, that kind of shit. So they're assholes. They don't fucking give a shit about her. They have a party the first night. These two characters have sex in the room. Louise has to leave because she's like, I'm not gonna sleep when two people are fucking. Fuck that. So she leaves and she realizes that it was a shitty night. So by the time that she realized that her dorm mates fucking suck ass, she decides, I'm gonna move out and move into this apartment that is near the school, but hey, I'm living by myself, it's all good. She lives in this place that's like next to a bakery, it has a rundown light, all this stuff is run by this old lady that is just like, hey, as long as you pay, it's all good. The first night she stays in this new place, she turns off the light and she finds herself teleported into the 1960s. And she's like, what the fuck? And this is where the movie starts to get very, very wild to me. They don't really explain the method or why or the reason for why she just happened to be teleported in the 1960s. It just happens. And she finds herself interchanging herself between herself and this other lady that's named Sandy. That's a 1960s aspiring singer. So she's like, oh, they kind of switch on and off pretty much throughout this segment. And this is kind of where the cinematography starts to get really fucking good. There's a shot where Sandy's going down the stairs and you see Louise just in the mirror, mirroring what she's doing. And it's a cool shot. I really, really liked what they were doing. And then they had this shot where Sandy was dancing with this guy. And as they were dancing, they were changing between Louise and Sandy. Now, they never really do this kind of shot ever again, or as much as you think that they would. But it's a cool shot nonetheless. For the first time you're seeing it, it's like, wow, this is like really cool and very creative and fun. They they never really do it again. It slowly starts to become this segment where Louise starts to just witness what's going on in the 1960s. Where, as I was watching this movie, I was wondering what's the point. Like, it was getting to the point where it's like, okay, so she's going to school, she's designing dresses, whatever, and then she's going to this 1960s vision. Like, what are we? What's gonna be like the climax of this? Like, what's leading up to? What's leading? What is it? What is this leading to? And it started to feel like it was just a movie about this girl watching the 1960s. It started to feel kind of weird. It was like watching a movie within a movie. And as I was thinking that, slowly the movie was planting seeds for something's going on. And around this time, they play the song Puppet on a String because Sandy finally found a guy that was going to get her into the music industry. She thought that she finally caught someone that was going to really promote her and put her in on the front stage. She then realizes that this guy isn't who he says he is, and she starts realizing this during the segment when Puppets on a String came on. She sits in the audience and she starts seeing this girl starts singing and dancing in a very provocative way, and she starts to realize this is kind of not what I signed up for. She starts to panic and she starts to run out. And as she's running out, she starts seeing that there's all these women that were being abused. They were having sex. She starts to realize that, oh, this is a brothel. This is like a prostitution ring shit. She sees that she sees drugs and she's like, I need to get the fuck out of here. And she realizes it's too late. She can't get out. She's now part of this career permanently because the guy roped her into this. So as that's going on, Louise leaves and starts realizing something's off is going on here. Holy shit. And she starts to second guess what she was like fantasizing about, because in the beginning of the movie she was very excited to see what was going on in the 1960s and with Sandy. She was very like on board with it. But around this time when this realization started to hit, Louise started to feel more depressed and torn as to what was going on with this, with all this that's going on with Sandy. So it started to affect her work. She was like, I don't know, like this is kind of fucking depressing, whatever. And around this time, it started to hit me that these stories are starting to parallel because Sandy starts getting surrounded by people who did not give a shit about her, like because after the Puppet on the String song, Louise starts being witness to all of these segments where Sandy's being used for sex. Like she's having sex and all this stuff. And that is kind of when the ghoulish ghost starts chasing Louise. And as this is going on, those ghoulish ghosty guys start to embody everyone around Louise's life that really either don't acknowledge her or treat her like shit. So she's just like, holy shit, what the fuck? And all this stuff, except for this other guy named John who she becomes friends with. So as this is going on, Louise starts losing sleep. She's freaking out. She's like, I can't get any peace anymore, because now when she goes to the 1960s, she's only being faced by ghosts and visions of sex. And she's like, I can't deal with this. This is stuff I don't want. And I don't want this to happen. Whatever. So she starts kind of losing it at this point. Then one night, after all this time of refusing to go to sleep, she finally goes back to sleep and wakes up in the 1960s again, and she witnesses a murder. She witnesses Sandy's death, and that fuels her into finding out who killed her. And this is what everything was leading up to. So this whole time I was thinking like, this is like watching a movie within a movie, but in reality you were seeing this crime being like built up. So you see Sandy getting killed and Louise starts to investigate. However, this is where one of my criticisms started to show up. So instead of doing a private investigation first, she immediately runs to the police. And I was like, you know what's going on is a little goofy. Like you're going back to the 1960s and you're witnessing something in the 1960s. Like how are you going to explain that to the cops? Like usually a character would be like, yeah, the cops are not going to believe this fucking story, so I got to do it myself before I can even get them involved. So that's usually the the train of thought that people have. Unless you could argue that maybe she's like, I'll go to the cops, maybe they have some information or whatever, I guess. It's just, it seemed way too weird to go straight to the police right after. Like, you'd think that she would at least try to read some newspaper articles before confronting the police. So she goes to the police, and of course, they don't believe her. And I was like, yeah, what? I was almost concerned that when I got to the part of the movie, if I was like kind of dreading that the movie was gonna go to a snail's pace, where we're gonna have a story of her in an asylum, and then it's like, oh, she has to break out. Oh, now she sees what's going on or whatever. But they don't do that, which is good. I was afraid it was gonna do that. I feel a lot of movies that deal with this kind of shit always has an arc where they go to an asylum, and then it takes so long to get out of the asylum that the movie starts to get boring. But no, it doesn't do that at all, which is great. And it goes on to her investigating the crime on her own. She then remembers that there's this one old guy that's been like stalking her almost. Because as she was going into the 1960s, she dyed her hair blonde because she really liked Sandy and she really wanted to be like her. So she realized that ever since she did that, this old man has been stalking her, creeping on her, all this stuff. So she was like, "This that gotta be the guy who killed her." So she confronts him. He's like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Bye bye." And they get hit by a car. He's dead. He's gone. And that leads her back to square one because she's like, "Well, what happened?" Because she then realizes that he was the cop. So in one of the 1960s flashbacks that she was experiencing, she saw that Sandy was talking to a police guy, a guy that was undercover, and Sandy doesn't really think about this at all. Not Sandy, I mean Louise. Louise didn't think of this at all, and this is something that dawned on me like after I watched the movie. So the old man and that cop both had this very like tick with their mouth. Like they would always talk like this sometimes. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like that kind of thing. And the old man had the same kind of mannerism. So I didn't think of it at all at first. I was like, oh, whatever. But then when that reveal happened, I was like, oh, yeah, it's much more obvious now because it starts to stand out more that you think about it. So then it leads to Louise really questioning what really happened. So as this is going on, she eventually realizes that it's her tenant. The person she pays rent to was the murderer all along. I will say this was a kind of a cool twist. Usually I would argue that people might say this is a bullshit twist to throw you off like a very like whatever story, but I thought it was pretty good. Um because by that time she when she realized who it was the old lady poisoned her, and she's like, oh shit, whatever. She runs back to her room to try to call the police or whatever. As she's up there, she sees all these ghosts, and these ghosts start talking to Louise saying, help, save us, she killed us, and all this stuff. And this I feel is another grip that some people might have. I'll be honest. I'm gonna give this movie props. They don't back down on their fucking moral. Like the moral of this story was pretty much that all these men that fucked over Sandy and paid for sex and all this stuff, like they did not back down on their stance against it. It's like, yeah, this is all fucking bullshit. These men did not give a shit about Sandy. These guys are assholes. They didn't give a shit. So why should we give a shit about them? So as these ghosts are like pleading with Louise to save them and to kill uh uh Sandy, the old lady at this point, she was like, "No, I'm not going to do that." Because she was like she was the victim. She was an aspiring actress and all these people around her like metaphorically killed her. So it's like I'm not going to fucking do shit for you. I just want to get out of here and leave. I don't want to deal with this shit right now. It's pretty much just her into self-defense like, hey, she's trying to kill me. I don't blame her, but I just want to fucking get out now, pretty much. So, at this point, At this point, Sandy finally makes it to the room. She kind of realizes that it's kind of fucked up what's going on and understands that, like, Louise wasn't really going to, like, rat her out or whatever. And she was like, look, just leave. The young man is about to die too. Save him too. You know, live pretty much. And she decided to sit in the house and die in the fire. So, as much as I said earlier, that it kind of sticks with its morals. Like, it still did not, it doesn't, a lot of movies do this, and this is a meme for Marvel movies. Like, they have this, like, villain that's like, oh, like, the meme would be like, oh, the villain would want healthcare for all. Oh, until you realize that they kill puppies, so he's bad, kill him, and then that's it. Like, they pretty much have a villain that has, like, a very sympathetic motive, but then it's like, well, they're a shitty person, so there you go. And with Sandy in this movie, they don't do that shit where it's like, yeah, Sandy was the victim, but she's fucking crazy. She sucks. Yeah, bye, bitch. Like, it doesn't do that shit with her. And I felt that it did a better job just kind of her accepting what she did. Like, because at the end, it was more of like she knew, yeah, killing these people was a crime. Yeah, but fuck them. These people sucked ass. I don't care. And she just kind of accepted her fate in that room. Like, she died knowing that she pretty much, she was like, I'm not going to jail for this. I'm just gonna die here. Fuck it. And that was it. And I like that more because it kind of gave Sandy more of a backbone, and it didn't like do this bullshit twist where it's like, okay guys, now she's a villain. It's like, no, no, she just killed these men because they were assholes, and she was like, I don't give a shit anymore. Pretty much, like, that's pretty much it. So I give this movie a lot of credit that it doesn't have a character that has a bullshit turn. You know, like, at least Sandy was a consistent character from start to finish. Like, her arc from where she started to her becoming a murderer made sense, and you kind of understood where she's coming from. Like, you kind of feel in the same line with Louise, where it's like, I get why you killed him. I get it. Kind of fucked up, but hey, I understand it. I understand these guys do suck, and that's pretty much it. Like, because these men that was having sex with Sandy were not good men. Like, these were not men that were just like, oh, whatever. These were men that were just being like mean to her, and this underbelly of the city, all this kind of shit. So that's how that works for me. I could see. I will say on the other side of the fence that people may not be happy with how strong of a narrative this movie ends on, but I kind of appreciated it much more than if they just made Sandy some maniacal evil person. Like, at least they made Sandy a consistent character that didn't betray who she was, and it didn't like seem bullshit to me. So I do love that this movie does not fucking do any bullshit with Sandy. It was just, this happened. This is how she feels. There you go. The movie ends with her finally coming to peace. She does a fashion design with all these dresses that she designed. Everyone loves it, and everyone lives happily ever after. So this movie ultimately was one of my favorite horror movies I've seen in a while. I still think It Follows is still one of my favorites because that movie is just fucking rad. This movie at least was clever, and I felt like it had something to say about society, these creative entertainment careers that could lead to like very dark places, that kind of shit. I love this kind of shit that this movie had. I As I said, I think some of the times I'm giving this movie too much credit for how smart it is. It's not a dumb movie, but it's not like a genius like Dave. It's not a David Lynch film. I'll put it that way. It's more like this fun little movie that takes a very simple premise with, oh, this murder mystery kind of thing, and they put all this stuff on top of it that makes it a much more memorable movie. I think, and this is kind of different from Baby Driver, where I think this is a better balance of style and substance. Though it does lean a little bit more to style, but at least it has something going with it that doesn't feel bland. It's a simple, safe story told in a much more unique way that it's not important to understand, oh, how is she going back in time? How is she in the 1960s? She's changing with Sandy. Is Sandy her? Is she Sandy? What's going on? Is she just watching this? Is she participating? What's going on? Like, those are questions that are not important to the story or to the narrative because it's not that kind of movie. So I do like it for a lot of that it proposes just for fun. And I love the design of the ghosts that you see. And the movie is more about this haunted house kind of thing that's haunted by the ghosts of these men that Sandy has killed. And that is the focus. It's not the focus of how she got there or anything like that. So it is an overall enjoyable movie. I would recommend it. It's a rad movie. I love that it kind of has this very abstract kind of ghost kind of deal with it. So if I were to rate it, if I were to score Last Night in Soho, I would give it an 8 out of 10. If that's like the highest. The lowest I would probably give it a 7 out of 10, but I'd probably give it an 8. I think the movie was a very tight film through and through. So check it out. It's only in theaters as far as I remember. I don't know if they put it on any streaming services or anything like that. Maybe check that out, but it's in theaters. Check your listings. Make sure that the film's great, the theater's great. The theater I went to, no one was there. It was perfect. It was like a private showing for me. It was like this is the best way to experience a movie. So there you go. That is it for on the spot review. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.